All right, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. I'll put my name in here. All right, is everybody where they're supposed to be?
Yep.
I already did a couple of
Right, define theme.
Oh, there's another part.
There's a next page.
But how did you do this, Mr. Amer, without?
After I read it, I went through and just
clicked random ones?
Answers, I clicked random ones.
Okay. All right, guys. Everybody's here?
Yeah.
Give me a thumbs up if you are.
This is for 21 points.
Here we go. Part 1 definitions. Number 1, define theme. The author's message about life and literature, the moral of the story, or a fact. Number 2, define symbol. Giving human characteristics to non-humans. A noun with attached extra meaning, an object that represents something else, or a comparison of two unlike things using like or as.
I know personification.
Number 3, define personification. A noun with attached extra meaning, an object that represents something else, a comparison of two unlike things using like or as, or giving human characteristics to non-humans.
It's gonna rain a bunch of dogs.
Question 4, define simile. A noun with attached extra meaning, an object that represents something else, a comparison of two unlike things using like or as, or the author's attitude toward the text. Question number 5, define metaphor. A noun with attached extra meaning, an object that represents something else, a comparison of two unlike things, or giving human characteristics to non-humans.
It's gonna rain a bunch of dogs.
Question number 6, define mood. The reader's opinion about the story, the reader's reaction to the text, or the reader's feelings about the text, or words used in the text.
I'm gonna answer the rest of my own.
Stay with us.
All right.
Number 7, define tone. The reader's feelings, the author's attitude towards the text, feelings the characters have in the text. Question number 8, static characters. Change their hair color or age, change from the protagonist to the antagonist, or do not change at all. And lastly for this part, number 9, dynamic characters. Change internally, their attitude, view of the world, or values, but not physically. Change their hair color or age, or change from the protagonist to the antagonist. I have no idea. I think so. I do not change your answers. I just have to randomly click them so that I can go on to the next screen. So I'm just randomly clicking. I'm not clicking the right ones, I don't think. Nope. All right. Part number 2 is a little bit longer because we do have to read a passage before we answer the questions. It says, read the following passage, then answer the questions that follow. The captain of the basketball team is a shark on the court. He circles his opponents and his eyes never leave the ball. When you least expect it, he'll pounce and steal the ball from you. Fast as lightning, he dribbles down the court, speeding by his opponents. The ball dances upon his fingertips and floats with grace into the net. The crowd roars with every swoosh of the net as he drives the ball home. Which of the following is an example of a metaphor? The captain of the baseball team is a shark on the court. The ball dances upon his fingertips and floats with grace into the net. where the crowd roars with every swoosh of the net as he drives the ball home. Number 11 says, which of the following is an example of a simile? The ball dances upon his fingertips and floats with grace into the net. Fast as lightning, he dribbles down the court, speeding by his opponents. Or the crowd roars with every swoosh of the net as he drives the ball home. Number 12, which of the following is an example of personification? The ball dances upon his fingertips and floats with grace into the net. Fast as lightning, he dribbles down the court, speeding by his opponents. Or the crowd roars with every swoosh of the net as he drives the ball home. Holy guacamole, this is a long story.
I'm gonna read it all. It's fine.
I'll read it out loud and we will answer the questions.
All right.
Read the following story, then answer the questions that follow. The Emperor's New Suit by Hans Christian Andersen. Many, many years ago lived an emperor who thought so much of new clothes that he spent all his money in order to obtain them. His only ambition was to be always well dressed. He did not care for his soldiers, and theater did not amuse him. The only thing, in fact, he thought anything of was to drive out and show a new suit of clothes. One day, two swindlers came to the city. They made people believe that they were weavers and declared that they could manufacture the finest cloth to be imagined. That must be wonderful cloth, thought the emperor, and he gave a large sum of money to the swindlers in advance that they should set to work without any loss of time. The swindlers requested the most expensive of silks and thread. They set up two looms and pretended to be very hard at work, but they did nothing on the looms. They worked at the empty looms till late at night. After 2 nights of pretending to work, they told the emperor they were done. When the emperor arrived, he found no exquisite suit, but the swindlers assured him it was there. Not wanting to appear stupid, the emperor acted delighted at the fantastic patterns and unique sewing that the weavers used. The emperor's attendants, not wanting to anger the emperor, exclaimed how stunning and unique this suit was, yet none could see the actual suit. So the emperor undressed, and the swindlers pretended to put the new suit upon him, one piece after another. And the emperor looked at himself in the mirror from every side. How well they look! How well they fit, said all. What beautiful patterns! What fine colors! A magnificent set of clothes. Yet still the emperor and none of his attendants could see the clothes. I am ready, said the emperor. Does not my suit fit me marvelously? Then he turned once more to the mirror that people should think he admired his garments. The emperor marched in the procession under the beautiful canopy, and all who saw him in the street and out of the windows exclaimed, Indeed, the emperor's new suit is incomparable. No one wished to let others know he saw nothing, for then he would have been unfit for his office or too stupid. Never were the emperor's clothes were more admired. This is a little twisty, huh?
Yeah.
To read? Okay, but he has nothing on it all, said a little child at last. But he has nothing on it all, cried at last the whole people. That made a deep impression upon the emperor, for it seemed to him that they were right. The emperor wore no suit at all. Guess he was naked. All right, question number 13. What is the theme of the story? Is it greed? Is it the king is self-absorbed and it leads to his downfall? Or is it trying to keep up appearances can lead to foolishness?
Did you hear about some dancers?
Yeah, I did.
Number 14. What does the emperor's new suit likely symbolize? Kindness, pride, or cleverness?
Oh man.
I don't know.
Take a best guess. Hold on one second.
Sorry.
Let me
I don't
just
know where this
pause. Those were the 2 questions for that story. So the last question, once again, was what does the emperor's new suit likely symbolize? Is it kindness, pride, or cleverness? And here's the next excerpt. Are you ready?
Yes.
Read the following excerpt from Anna Sewell's Black Beauty Then answer the questions that follow. I loved this story when I was a little girl. I read it. It was like my first big chapter book.
Really?
Yeah. All right. The day came for going away. Jerry had not been allowed to go out yet, and I never saw him after that New Year's Eve. Polly and the children came to bid me goodbye. Poor old Jack, dear old Jack. I wish we could take you with us, she said. And then, laying her hand on my mane, she put her face close to my neck and kissed me. Dolly was crying and kissed me too. Harry stroked me a great deal, but said nothing. Only he seemed very sad, and so I was led away to my new place. What is the mood of the above passage? Terror, sadness, or relief? Which sentence from the passage best supports the mood? This is question number 16. So, which sentence from the passage best supports the mood? Dolly was crying and kissed me too. Jerry had not been allowed to go out yet, and I never saw him after that New Year's Eve, or Polly and the children came to bid me goodbye. Um, 17. What word from the passage best support the tone? Goodbye, kissed, and nothing. Led away, crying, and mane. Crying, sad, and led away. Here's another long passage. Oh my goodness gracious, that is a long passage.
Oh my God.
All right.
Uh-oh.
All right. Read the following passage, then answer the questions that follow. An Accident in the Attic by Peter Romberg. My dad, Edgar Twombly, was a total deadbeat. He had never had a steady job, and after my younger sister was born, he didn't have any job. But it wasn't like he stayed home taking care of us kids. He sat and watched TV. Or he went over to his buddy's house and they spent hours in the garage. Or he just wasn't home. We weren't sure where he was those days. Then, when I was 10, he just left. My mom was heartbroken. I didn't understand why. Good riddance to him, I thought. My name is Hunter Twombly, though I wish it wasn't. This is the story of how I stopped being a kid. Yo, Hunter, my friend Miles called from across the street. You do Mr. Mack's math homework? Mind if I take a look at it to check my answers? It meant Miles hadn't done his homework. I crossed the street and told him, if it were any teacher other than Mr. Mack, I'd let you. But you know how he can be. Yeah, and I know how you can be when it comes to being all honorable and not helping a friend out. He was right. Even if it hadn't been Mr. Mack's homework he needed, I wouldn't have let him copy it. Growing up with my dad, I had decided to never be like him. I would be hardworking, honorable, and independent. I didn't want to have to rely on anyone or anything. My friends knew it. Hey, so what are you doing after school? Miles asked. Ken and I are thinking of walking around downtown. Want to come? Sorry, Miles, I replied. My mom's making me clean out the attic today. It's the one day she has off work and she wants help with the project. I know how that goes. Jakir, can sit down, bud. I know how that goes. Last weekend, my dad made me help clean out the garage. At least he paid me for it. I closed the door to our house behind me as quietly as I could, took off my shoes and jacket, and patted the kitchen for a snack before Mom knew I was home. But you gotta sit down because you're a little bit distracting, okay? I closed the door to our house behind me as quietly as I could, took off my shoes and jacket, and padded to the kitchen for a snack before Mom knew I was home. I could hear her banging around in the attic above our small one-story house. I ate an apple covered in peanut butter quickly and helped my younger sister Ella get started on her homework before I went up to the attic. Piles of boxes and clouds of dust surrounded Mom. We didn't have a lot of stuff up in the attic, no old mannequins or record collections or old trunks. All we had were boxes and boxes of papers, letters, and pictures. She sneezed as I walked up the stairs and wiped her eye with a tissue. Hey, Hunter, thanks for helping me with this. I smiled. No problem, Mom. She has looked thinner and older ever since Edgar left. I still can't think of him as my dad, since he certainly didn't act like one. What do you want me to do? I want to go through all these boxes and sort them. There's a lot of family history in the pictures and letters up here. I'm thinking of writing a family history so we know where we came from. I'm hoping this stuff will help. If we each take a box, we can make the sorting go more easily. Mom tossed me a pack of sticky notes and a pen. Put everything in piles based on the decade they're from. Put the year on the note, and if you come across anyone's name, put that on the note too. That way, I'll be able to look through the years. I got down to work. There was a lot of old pictures and letters in the box I was going through, but they were from all sorts of different decades. I saw an old black and white photo of a man in a soldier's uniform standing next to a young woman in a white dress and gloves. There was a faded letter written in thin handwriting that was dated from 1886. I found a diary from 1995 with a cover that looked like an old cassette tape. I glanced inside and realized it was my mom's old diary from high school. I put 1995 in the note and wrote Mom on it. Then put it under the pile with the other stuff from the 90s. Then I found an old medical bill with Edgar Twombly's name on it. It was dated March 15th, 2000. It said that the patient was admitted following a workplace accident. An emergency spinal surgery was performed. What? I thought to myself. My dad, Edgar Twombly, had been hurt at a job? Instead of labeling the medical bill with a note, I dug into the box and grabbed a handful of papers in there. I glanced over a disability claim by Edgar Twombly. I paid more attention to a workers' compensation lawsuit for people who were hurt on the job, but I didn't really understand most of it. To be honest, though, I didn't need to. Words left off the page, words like a forklift accident and a permanent disability. But my dad hadn't been disabled. He'd just been a deadbeat, right? I turned to my mom. Mom, what are all these papers of Dad being in an accident? It came out of nowhere. I called him Dad. I hadn't called him Dad in 5 years. Mom gave me a long stare and finally said, I think you're old enough to know now, Hunter. You were probably old enough years ago, but I just don't like talking about it. Your dad was hurt in a bad accident just after you were born. It was the company's fault, and they took care of us well enough for it. That's why your dad hardly ever worked when you were growing up, and why he spent so much time just sitting. Didn't you ever wonder why he never really played catch with you? I had wondered that, but I had assumed it was because he was a deadbeat who didn't really care about his family. My mother continued, to be honest, he loved working. The years where he couldn't do any work were really hard on him. I think that's why he left in the end. He could see that his injury was hurting you and Ella, and he couldn't bear it. She paused, and I could see her eyes begin to glisten. Watching him waste away like that was hurting me too, but at least I didn't see him all day like you and your sister did. That was the day I really figured out who my dad was, and it was the day I stopped being a kid. It took a long time to stop hating him, but that was the day I began to change my mind about him. I didn't change much as a person. I still tried to be hardworking, honorable, and independent. The difference was that now I was doing it to be more like my dad, instead of trying to be different from him. Is Hunter a dynamic or static character? Static because Hunter hates his father the entire story. Dynamic because Hunter begins by not knowing his father and ends the story by meeting his father through medical records. Or dynamic because Hunter begins by hating his father and ends the story respecting his father. Question number 19. Is Hunter's mom static or dynamic? Static because she does not change her perception about her ex-husband. Static because she realizes that Hunter is just like her ex-husband. Or dynamic because she changes her perception about Hunter throughout the story. Question number 20. What are the limitations of a first-person point of view? There are no limitations to the first-person point of view. First-person narratives require the reader to trust the narrator to be truthful, and they only provide the perspective of one character in the story, as opposed to many points of view. Or, with a first-person narration, only one character's experience is explained, as opposed to many. In question 21, what are the advantages of a first-person point of view? With a first-person narration, the reader learns about how other characters think and feel. First-person narratives allow for a better understanding of the narrator's perspective, as the reader knows exactly what the narrator is thinking and feeling, or there are no advantages to a first-person point of view. All right, just make sure you clicked everything. I think all the questions were required, and you can go ahead and submit when you are done. Does anybody need any clarification, or are we pretty good?
Only missed 7 questions.
Not too shabby. Let me stop this really quick.